Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest edition of the Woke Bros. Of course, I'm your co-host, Big Wos, aka Wos Nando Vila. I'm joined as always by my brother on the west side, Nando Vila. What's up, man?
Doing well, doing well. About to trying not to DUI any of these next few. Try my best.
Listen, shouts to Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and we don't condone that. Like, get a designated driver or take an Uber. However, there's some funny ass shit going on in Democratic politics, and we're gonna get into that towards the end of the show. First things first, I just realized as I got on to record this that I'm wearing the exact same shirt that I was wearing last week on the
You haven't
show.
changed.
Just two weeks in a row, I'm wearing the same shirt. Shouts to the Rosses by my crib. I bought this nice NBA shirt that I could work out in. And I'm really digging it. But first, man, a lot of pretty pivotal elections happened. I guess all elections are pretty fucking pivotal at this point. Happened here in the great state of California. Here we had the mayoral. What was this exactly, Nando?
It's a jungle. They call it a jungle primary.
Okay, yeah.
Basically, it's not like your classic kind of party primaries, like the way Bernie ran against Hillary in the Democratic primary. It's like there's like a bunch of people kind of run. Doesn't matter what party they are, and then if anyone gets above 50%, they win. But if you don't, then like the top two go up to if no one gets 50% or more, than the top two go on to the runoff in November, which is like the kind of quote unquote real election.
Yeah, and so what ended up happening is that Karen Bass, who Nando damned with fate praise before the show by calling her, quote, a not terrible Democrat.
Yeah.
Which look, man, that statement's gonna have resonance when we get into what we get into later on in the show. And Rick Caruso, who's like, an uber wealthy guy. And so they will be going up against one another. For people who don't know Rick Caruso, I found this race interesting in two ways. Simply because because I'm lazy and I'm a bad civilian, I'm still registered in New York State to vote. I don't vote in California. And two, like a couple of things. All of my lib friends on social just like panic posting, guys, Caruso's gonna get the 51%. Guys, we can't, this will be doomed. Kid Caruso. Like they hate Caruso, my good lib friends. And the second thing I noticed about his candidacy, Nando, he's the candidate to the stars. Kim Kardashian endorsement, Snoop Dogg endorsement, like just all kinds of celebrity.
Elon Musk.
Like it was just fucking hilarious.
Katy Perry.
Like he got all these celebrity endorsements. And then, of course, because I think we're still in the midst of what my man Pascal Robert calls the great awakening. Karen Bass, a professional, great resume, black woman running on the other side. A lot of my good liberals, especially, the black yuppie set that I tend to know here in LA. It was like, this strong black woman needs our support and yada, yada, yada. Nobody was really, I'm not going to lie, nobody was, not that I was looking for them to, but nobody was like, yo, this chick supports this or she supports that or Rick Caruso supports this. It was kind of just like, Caruso bad, 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 evil. And Karen Bass, she's a great woke. Well, she will represent a woke progress, right? And it's interesting because I feel like in LA, the only thing people care about right now is the homelessness situation. And I'm assuming people are going to vote for whoever they think is going to most effectively deal with it.
Yeah, well, or who most effectively campaigns
right
on that issue. Neither of them going to do anything about it. I mean, so Rick Caruso, it's worth pointing out, Rick Caruso is a Republican. Okay, this is like how funny these celebrity endorsements are, because like if he he was a Republican his whole life. He's a billionaire real estate developer. He developed the Grove, in Hollywood.
I like the Grove. It's a cute little place. It's
Yeah.
like a place where I take people who are visiting LA. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, let me take you to this outdoor mall. It's cute.
Yeah.
The trolley. It's nice at
the
Christmas.
farmer's market.
Yeah. It's a cool little spot.
Yeah. So he did that. He's a billionaire. He's a Republican. Like 2 seconds before he decided to run for mayor, he switched to Democrat because LA is, Democrat. And he, he obviously like self-financed his campaign. I mean, to the extent that you saw any ads about this race, they were most likely Rick Caruso ads. Like I'm sure, like Wos, like you live in LA, like if you're watching the NBA finals or if you're on YouTube or whatever, like you're just going to see tons of Rick Caruso ads. And yeah, man, he's been very effective at getting a lot of these celebs to endorse him. I'm looking here at a LA Mag list. Okay, Katy Perry, Snoop Dogg, Wolfgang Puck, Elon Musk. Elon Musk said Los Angeles is fortunate to have someone like Rick Caruso running for mayor. He's awesome. Gwyneth Paltrow, Kim Kardashian, Kris Jenner, Ted Sarandos, Maria Shriver, Scooter Braun, Snapchat CEO Evan Spiegel, George Lopez.
This is crazy.
Good shit.
Which means he cut a check and these people endorsed him.
Oh, yeah, probably.
That's it.
But I'm wondering if he was like still a Republican or like officially a Republican. He's obviously still a Republican, right? How many of them would have the balls to endorse him?
Right.
But my friend Josh Androsky, who's like very involved in local LA politics, he was very involved in the Hugo Soto Martinez campaign for city council, which who we interviewed on this show back in the day. He told me that Rick Caruso is basically Trump, except he's not funny, and that he's
real estate guy, born into money guy, and is just a really egomaniac.
Yeah. And he's been running basically on I would call it like a tough on homelessness platform, which I think, probably has a lot of purchase in LA.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he for example, he's an advocate of this was, you're in New York. You're from New York. Bill Bratton's broken windows policy,
of course,
of policing. Rick Caruso has kind of endorsed that strategy for policing. And he definitely sucks. I don't know. He definitely sucks. And Karen Bass, the Democrat who got in the runoff. You want to hear a quick list of celebs that endorsed Karen Bass?
Absolutely.
There's some funny ones too. Samuel L. Jackson, hell yeah. Ken Jeong, the Asian guy.
Of course, from whatchamacallit? The Hangover.
The Hangover.
Great actor.
Donald Glover, Magic Johnson, Steven Spielberg.
Shouts to Donald Glover. He's a comrade.
Yeah. No, he's not. He's an Andrew Yang guy.
Is he really? I thought he was a comrade.
No. He's
not Donald Glover. I meant Danny Glover.
Danny Glover. Danny Glover is a comrade. Yeah.
I thought you said Danny Glover. Donald Glover is. Come on, give me a break.
Yeah, but then there's some random ones. Like I'm looking at this list. Roger Goodell.
Wow. Roger Goodell. I guess those daps at the NFL draft actually paid off in some type of way.
Yep. We got John Legend. We got a bunch. But yeah, the all important celebrity primary. But that's going to be the election in November. Is this kind of billionaire real estate developer guy who is pretty terrible, and Karen Bass, who's like fine. Talking to Josh, he was like, obviously, amongst those two, Karen Bass would be infinitely more preferable, but she's not like, I wouldn't even call her a progressive, let alone, comrade.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah.
She's just a not completely abhorrent Democrat.
Yeah. She's not a Raytheon executive,
Right. Exactly. Which I guess is a step in the right direction that we can all live with. So we want to move on to San Francisco, where, I spent 5 days out there. Shouts to everybody in the Bay. I was there for the first two games of the NBA Finals. Where, the district attorney, man, like, got toppled. A really progressive district attorney who won his previous campaign on just like, like low, like getting rid of ridiculous bails and not locking a bunch of people up and, really doing some progressive policy. But I guess, man, the homelessness issue out there has come back to bite this guy in his ass. And I guess it comes down to a coalition of people who just want to criminalize homelessness. And look, this is what I think about, honestly, man, for most of it. And if you're a politician, this tactic, although it might seem cynical, seems to be the one that will work the best. People just don't want to see it. They just don't want to have to look at homeless people. They don't care where you bring them. They don't care what becomes of them. They don't actually care about the well-being of these people. And so much that the homelessness issue makes them sick, it's that they have to constantly be bombarded by it. And people don't like that. And, oftentimes the solution that the cops come up with is to just arrest them. Like, yo, you got drugs on you, you're openly doing drugs, you're all this other stuff. Like, we're just going to put you in the damn pokey. And I guess that won out.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's pretty, it's pretty bleak because, the sort of twin issues that are kind of rearing their heads, both in California and in a lot of cities around America, is either the reality or the perception of rising crime, and people argue about that stuff. And it's not really important, what the actual particulars are of it. But, there is this perception, at least, that there's rising crime, and there's some evidence to suggest that there is a rise in crime, and also just like the very dramatic rise in homelessness. I mean, there was a big spike in homelessness all over California and the country after 2008, but since the pandemic, it just like here in LA and in San Francisco, it's like really skyrocketed, and it's kind of warped the politics of the cities, because homelessness turns people into like full-on reactionaries. Like they don't, and the problem is that the solution to these issues is like very clear and obvious, which is that to solve crime, you basically need to fund social services, not just like social workers to deal with like criminals, but also like Medicare for all would reduce crime, and, better jobs would reduce crime. And all of these things are expensive and take a lot of time. And instead, what we do is the much cheaper option, which is just, basically criminalize everything and incarcerate.
And that's the part that I think is important. Even when you talk about stuff like defund the police, right? Which it's a great idea in practice. Like not and like decriminalizing the situation with the homelessness. But if you have no infrastructure in place, like the police thing, I think about, because I'm like, look, if people don't have jobs that they can go work at, and this stuff is still illicit and illegal and profitable, and people are going to fight over those profits, this idea that you just tell the cops to go home and we wish this problem away, that don't make no sense. There's no infrastructure to support that as an idea, right? So, and I say it all the time, like we have a counter example. It's called prohibition. We literally invented organized crime in America because we fucking banned alcohol. Illegal trade sprang up, mass crime, murder, all kinds of violence, all kinds of crazy shit. We decided one day we're not going to do it anymore. Nobody gets killed over the sale of alcohol anymore, right? Not that we don't have alcoholics still, not that there aren't some societal ills involved with the abuse of alcohol, but we got it regulated. We got it under control. And now, there's no thing. Nobody passes out if somebody's drinking a beer in public, right? Like we have the counter example of this. And, I think that's what we need to do with drugs as well. Like I will just always feel that way. However, with the homeless problem, like, again, like we can be less punitive in how we deal with the homelessness issues in places like New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, But man, if we don't got nothing to do with these people, we have no programs to pump in. We can't support them in any way. We can't put them up in housing. We can't like you're dealing with two bad choices here, which is
Yeah.
fucking criminalize them or just let this shit be, goddamn Hamsterdam from The Wire, which nobody wants to deal with.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like, dude, I mean, I understand if you're, if you live in LA and you're just like a middle class person and there's like a homeless person living on your street doing heroin and your
Taking
wife
a
or
dump.
kids have to, yeah, or
Right.
whatever, like you fucking, like you want them gone, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Like I understand that instinct. I mean, the solution to homelessness is not fucking rocket science. Like other countries and other cities have figured it out. Like, I mean, I don't know. I was just in Spain. You walk around Spain, you don't see homeless people. You just don't. Like they don't, like it's not like it is here, that there is when you kind of put in housing laws that keep the cost of housing down, you will reduce the number of homeless. That's just the reality. Like that because in America we're having a housing cost issue that is just unbelievable, both in terms of rents, but also in housing prices, all that shit. Like that leads to a rise in homelessness. Like it's not rocket science. Like you need more affordable housing, and as well as shelters to put people in when they can't even afford that. But again, those things take a lot of money. They take a lot of time, and they take a lot of political will that just doesn't exist in a system like ours that disperses powers to local communities. We think of local communities as like these kind of nice, quaint things, but this is something that Amber Lee Frost always talks about, that the smaller the political unit, the more reactionary it is. Like your family, like you'll do anything to protect your family, right? Like you would murder someone. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like the smaller the political unit, the more reactionary your instinct is. The larger it gets, the kind of more progressive it gets. So if we didn't have this kind of insane federal system in which like 50 well-organized neighbors can block any homeless shelter in their neighborhood, because they can like go show up to city council meetings and shit like that most normal people don't do, then you're just never going to get a solution to the problem, really. I mean, fundamentally, like in other countries where the central government has much more power, the central government just like, okay, like this is our country. Where do we have a homelessness crisis? Okay, there we need more housing. We're just going to force that city to do it. You know what I mean? And they make the decision elsewhere, and it frankly works out better. But here, like, because we have these kind of this very loose federal system in which like 50 neighbors can organize and block something
and just say like you're not allowed to make a housing unit that's more than 3 floors high, and and you're in the middle of San Francisco in a legitimate fucking housing crisis where you shipping people off to Sacramento and God knows where because they can no longer afford to live in the city that they grew up in and that they even work in, oftentimes like civil servants and shit. And you have a problem on your hands. And you sent me this story through a New York Times article, and in the article they mentioned like, oh, this comes at a time where Democrats nationally are trying to figure out what their messaging is on stuff like homelessness or stuff like policing, which middle class suburbanites and people like that, they are a lot more conservative on those issues than normal. And my instinct was to be like, man, why are we making this a national referendum of San Francisco, which is a hyper specific city, right? Like I think about Uvalde, right? Like that shooting in the sticks in the middle of fucking nowhere. You can't make that a referendum on policing. Like that police department has absolutely nothing in common with the NYPD. There is no overlap. There is no crossover. They call themselves cops, but the NYPD in its sheer numbers, money, like militants, like you can't compare what those cats do over there in that dusty ass town to what NYPD, which can legitimately be considered a fucking army. Okay, a little mini army, right?
It's larger than most countries' armies.
Period. Like you can't
Yeah.
compare those two. So like my instinct is to be like, man, don't do that. But then again, Nando, when I think about it, I'm like, yo, most big cities are facing a lot of these problems. They're facing issues of housing. They are facing issues of extreme inequality that leads to homelessness. Like we see it here in LA, we see it here in New York, we see it here in San Francisco, which, by the way, all Democratic Party strongholds.
Hmm.
Which vote blue no matter who. Vote, just vote, Nando, vote. Don't bitch, vote.
Yeah.
Because that's gonna be our salvation. Which when Barry's patronizing us like that, the other part he's saying is like vote for Democrats. That's what he's implying. Like just vote and everything
Yeah.
is going to be great. I do wonder what the Democrats are going to do about this because guess what? Their last and only strongholds left are these
No,
major
I mean,
cities.
what they're gonna do is they're gonna move to the right, but it's the same thing. It's the same issue with like national security stuff, in which like they're whenever they try to move to the right on that stuff, voters just don't trust them on those issues. Like they just like associate the Republicans for whatever reason more with those. So when Democrats try to do it, it always comes off as fake, So when like the Democrats run like on a expanding policing and a tough on crime platform, and then some other Republicans like running on that same shit, like people are gonna be like, I trust the Republican on that stuff more. Like if I care about that stuff, they're gonna
Mm-hmm.
trust the Republican more. So it never works out anyway. So yeah, I mean it's it's a bleak political time. I mean the Chase Bowden, who's the progressive DA in San Francisco, his recall is just like brutal because like what ended up happening in San Francisco, and this is Larry Krasner has faced a little bit of this in Philly, although
Philly.
Krasner just seems like a uniquely talented guy who's like able to overcome that stuff. But like essentially what happens is the cops go on strike and they refuse to investigate crimes, and they just like let crimes go. Like there's a story of Chesa Boudin in that New York Times piece of like having his office like having to rent a U-Haul truck to like basically do a citizen's arrest on this guy who was like a known burglar who was like running rampant, and the cops just like wouldn't arrest him because they're protesting. They want a tough on crime DA to have their back. And whenever like a guy who's like trying to hold cops accountable or whatever, the cops are just like, okay, like we're just not gonna
We'll go on
and
strike.
what are they gonna do? Like they can't do anything about it. Like so man, it's a tough situation. And then the crime rises, and then the media latches onto it, and then people's perception of crime, probably gets overblown, and then yeah, it's a vicious cycle, and you're gonna see a rash of like more reactionary policies kind of be passed, and shit, like there's no real solution again with given the current political tools that we have at our disposal. And I know we sound like a fucking broken record, but it's the only real solution to the social ills that affect America, whether it's gun violence or crime or police reform or whatever. Is like it's all kind of meaningless until you have an organized working class. I mean, this is where like a lot of the political analysis falls short. Like I'm a pretty doctrinaire Marxist, and
Why'd you
like
say that under your breath like that?
well, because people get like yeah, but I'm like, dude, like the reality is that like class solidarity is the only thing that'll get us out of it, and the only way to kind of solidify and really allow the working class to exert power is organized labor. And until they do that, until there is like an organized labor movement that is large and powerful and militant, like all this political stuff is just going to be culture war back and forth. No real fundamental change, no real kind of solution to any of the social ills, which are basically give people security in their lives, give people a decent income, a decent job, a decent house to live in, future for their kids, food on their table, all that stuff. And a lot of social ills just kind of go away when you do that. If not, you get violence, you get gun deaths, you get drug addiction, you get suicide, you get crime, and you get this fucking awful politics. And that's just the reality of where we're going to be for a while.
Damn. So fixing microaggressions won't solve everything. It's
No,
crazy.
dude, no.
So I want to get to my favorite story of the day, Nando. the second most or third most powerful Democrat in America, a woman you guys might have heard of, Nancy Pelosi, recently had to do some financial disclosures, Nando.
Yeah.
And just a couple of some interesting tidbits came out of that. And this is coming out of Reuters, Nando. In a periodic transaction report signed last Friday and appearing on the House of Representatives website on Monday, the senior Democrat disclosed that her husband, financier Paul Pelosi, on May 13th, bought Apple call options for between $500,000 and $1 million. On May 24th, he bought more Apple call options in an amount between $250,000 and $500,000. The disclosure shows. On the same day, Paul Pelosi bought Microsoft call options for as much as $600,000. So Nancy Pelosi's husband bought about $2 million in stock in these tech companies, which and people might say, well, why would this even matter? What does this matter, Nando? I'm gonna give you a counter example. Professional sports. We've legalized gambling. NBA players cannot bet on NBA games.
Yeah.
Not that they can't bet on the games that they themselves play in, because they can obviously affect the outcomes. They can't bet on games, period. And when you do get caught, the punishments are severe. We're talking about a third of a year of game checks, if not outright kicked out of the NBA for having gambled on your sport. Obviously, politics is a little bit different, right? But it's not really. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, Nancy Pelosi can absolutely put her finger on the scale on policy that can make Apple stock, Microsoft stock more valuable. So the idea that this chick and her husband can be playing roulette or be at the craps table of the stock market while basically being one of the biggest leaders of the Democratic Party, like, the idea that this isn't fucking outright corruption, I just don't understand.
I mean, this is one of our hobby horses, but I mean, because it's just so blatant that, it's just so flagrantly unethical that, the fact that there are people on Wall Street who literally just follow Paul Pelosi's stock trades and just copy them. Like, if he buys something, people just buy them, and like those people are up on the market, like they beat the S&P 500, which is kind of like a signal that you're beating the market. There's people that literally just do that. They just watch Paul Pelosi's trades and they just copy them, because everyone understands that if you're the congresswoman, especially the Speaker of the House, especially the congresswoman from San Francisco, where especially these companies themselves are headquartered, that if you're picking them, at a certain time, that you may have wind of certain information, or you are aware that certain policies are going to come down, or certain regulations are going to be scrapped, or whatever, that might affect these stocks. It's just one of those things that the fact that that people in Congress and in the Senate are allowed to pick individual stocks is insane. It's absolutely outrageous. Nancy Pelosi has always defended it. She recently
no kidding. Don't say.
She recently kind of like made some bullshit attempt to ban it, but like, of course the Democrats didn't actually do it when they're in power, and they're not going to do it because half of them are on the take, or maybe more than half of them. And it's just, again, it's just like waiting for these people to save us. Like, it's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. I mean, this is just the latest example. And, Wos, it's just funny because, like, man, she's had a tough week. Paul Pelosi just had a tough week.
Paul Pelosi got popped for DUI, y'all. And my favorite tidbit of this, 82-year-old man getting popped for DUI. Nando, what car was this man driving?
A nice 2021 Porsche.
This
10:30
is just,
p.m. You know,
oh my God.
they were called to the scene at 10:30 p.m. He was arrested about an hour later with a DUI. And yeah, bail was set to $5,000. I just love the idea of like an 82-year-old man. I mean, I wouldn't trust an 82-year-old man behind the wheel,
Stone
you know, at
sober. Right.
stone sober at noon. After a few drinks, Paul Pelosi, man, you're really taking a chance there, and it's just, yeah, no, who cares? Nothing, nothing's gonna happen. It's just he's just gonna count his millions again. Nancy Pelosi, one of the richest members of Congress by far, and yeah, there was this cover of New York Mag cover on Dianne Feinstein, which is just I can't believe they actually wrote this piece, basically kind of defending Feinstein from like the wave of articles about her that basically say that she's just completely gone mentally, and she's a senator from the most populous state in America, and yeah, she's also rich as fuck. She's got like a Lake Tahoe house right on the water that's like worth like $40 million or something crazy like that. These are the liberals who are supposed to save
Champions
us.
of the people. Champions
Yeah.
of the people. Great. Yeah. So, we just wanted to fill you guys with hope and joy about our political prospects and our political economy. This story just killed me because it's just the perfect Democratic Party story in 2022. Anyway, that's our show for today. Make sure you become a Patreon. Costs you a cup of coffee every single month. So if you can't afford it, become a Patreon. Helps us put out this great content for you guys. Of course, check out all the other Counter Dings offerings. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.
Later.